Quick question about policy. If Donald Trump does win, and if the Republicans keep the majority, will you bring the national abortion ban up for a vote?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
You said you didn't know what I meant by a national abortion ban. I meant the Life Begins at Conception Act, which you are a co-sponsor of.
Okay, so Jake Tapper clarified there that he is talking about a particular bill. But also, while I'm a critic very often of Jake Tapper, I don't think that he needed to do that. What do you mean you don't know what he's talking about, Mike Johnson? You're the Speaker of the House. Have you met your caucus? Have you met those people? They've talked very often in a variety of forms about a federal ban on abortion. You know that. You're one of the religious-y ones in that caucus. I have a feeling you've had those talks. So to suddenly be like, a ban on abortion, what name so? I've never heard of this concept, is certainly convenient. And by the way, as someone who has spoken up in defense of Mike Johnson against the deranged assaults of Marjorie Greene, at this point, I need to remind everyone, he is still one of the bad guys here because he's implying that he has no idea about any of this. But bear in mind, it's really easy for Donald Trump to get elected and then for Mike Johnson to suddenly remember. And in advance of that, let me remind you of one of the forms of this. This is the one that Jake Tapper was referring to. The Life at Conception Act was introduced back in January of last year by GOP Representative Alex Mooney of West Virginia. It has 125 total Republican sponsors. That's not like the whip has counted that it has 125 votes. That's 125 people who feel so committed to it that they desperately want their name to be affiliated with it. So just bear that in mind. Here's the weird thing. It includes Mike Johnson. Well, what the heck? Did someone take over his body? Has he been brainwashed? How does he not know that he signed on to that thing? I mean, it was a full year ago. I mean, you can't expect someone to remember that they signed on to remove people's rights across the country. You can't expect them to remember that for a full year. But anyway, the bill defines the term human being to include all stages of life, including the moment of fertilization, cloning, or other moment at which an individual member of the human species comes into being, which seems to me like circular logic. Comes into being is not nearly as biologically specific as they imply it is. And obviously, as always with these sorts of bans or the sorts of like definitions of the beginning of life, there are a lot of potential and hypothetical side effects of this. And I have no doubt that they will ignore all of these because the end goal is fairly simple: for getting rid of abortion. But notably, not just getting rid of abortion, because that bill does not include a carve out for IVF. Though it does state that nothing in the bill should, quote, be construed to authorize the prosecution of any woman for the death of her unborn child. So this is not a bill that goes as far as some on the right would like. This potentially could result in doctors being locked up, but not necessarily the person who had the abortion at this point. And the interesting thing about it is he doesn't remember this. He certainly doesn't want to talk about it. And that is interesting. They don't want to talk about it at the federal level. They don't really want to talk about it at the state level, but they don't not want to talk about it enough to actually take it off the table as a relevant issue. And as an example of that, I want to return to Arizona. And obviously you remember that like a week ago, Arizona decided, the Supreme Court of the state decided that their 150-year-old ban on abortion. Are we having some sort of connection issues? Maybe it's just an internet thing. I'll go forward. Arizona Republicans have taken yet another attempt to get rid of their 1864 abortion ban, and they have stopped that. And so that makes now 3 attempts by the Democrats in Arizona to remove this ban. And the fascinating thing about the politics here is that when the Arizona State Supreme Court decided to uphold this and effectively in the near future apply it, many of the Republicans, not necessarily in Arizona, but on Fox News and others nationally, were saying that this seems suspicious. It seems like some sort of Democrat plot, a trap. Here is what the Republican House Speaker had to say about that. I would ask everyone in this chamber to respect the fact that some of us believe that abortion is, in fact, the murder of children. The last thing we should be doing today is rushing a bill through the legislative process to repeal a law that has been enacted and reaffirmed by the legislature several times. Abortion is a complicated topic. It is ethically, morally complex. I understand that we have deeply held beliefs. Yeah, we do. Some people have deeply held beliefs that those are their rights. They've had those rights their entire lives. And while you don't want to rush to get rid of this bill, you're perfectly happy with the fact that just it came into effect. People didn't expect it. That was totally fine to you. And it's interesting that you just pump the brakes. It's been over a week now. Do you have some sort of replacement that is not a complete and utter ban on abortion? Because you talk about it as being nuanced and about it being complex, but this bill is not nuanced. This bill is not complex. It's an 1864 sounding total shutdown on these rights. Okay, do you want to go back and research the level of medical knowledge we possessed back in 1864? The overall consideration for the rights of different groups. There was certainly a lack of nuance at that point, and yet that's the bill that will stand. And you might think based on that statement that they're taking this very serious and it's tough to keep it going, but we just need some time. Okay, I'll let you be the judge. Here's how they reacted when it passed. Okay, so yeah, it's serious, it's nuanced, but when the Democrats try to, protect access to the rights, let alone the fact that as a result of this, we can expect, like in similar states, like in Texas, people will literally die as a result of the passage of this bill. People's ability to bear children later in life will probably end up being taken away by the medical consequences. The fact that this is not even one of those bills that possesses kind of like the fig leaves of exceptions for a variety of things. It doesn't do that. I believe it has for the life of the pregnant person. I think, and again, that has proven to be utterly worthless in a number of states, but it doesn't even have the normal other considerations. And so they're super happy about this. They're clapping now. We'll see if they'll be clapping in November. But speaking of November, Carrie Lake, okay, she has to try to get elected in this same state. This does not seem like it would assist her campaign, but she would have you believe it's not a big deal. Everyone's fighting about a law that's not even gonna be enforced here in Arizona. First of all, that is a bold statement that nobody's going to enforce it. Even if we have a restrictive law here, you can go 3 hours that way, 3 hours that way, and you're gonna be able to have an abortion. And that's how rights should work. You should go, I think it's in the Constitution that it says you have freedom of speech. If you just go 3 hours that way and then 3 hours that way, you can peaceably assemble 6 hours in that direction. I think that's what the founders would have wanted. So look, she is in a difficult position here, and she clearly does not have the rhetorical capacity to get herself out of that difficult position. This is a threat to her election. It's a threat to multiple Republicans in the legislature as well, and it should be. It should be not just because of what they're defending, but how doggedly they're defending it, okay? The Republicans clearly want this to be a thing that they're fighting about in the months leading up to the election. Well, look, my preference would be for people to have the rights that they deserve. But in the absence of that, okay, let's have this be the thing that the Arizona elections hinge on, and potentially the choice of the president in November.